Hello, I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another CSGO News episode. I hope you guys all enjoy. Going to be a ton of great stories today. As always, going to be timestamped down below. Let's hop into our first one, though, thanks to Decay, and then we'll get into a lot of crazy stories. And again, you guys can check those timestamps and skip forward as much as you want. And on top of that, to the guy who commented yesterday, there was one comment who said, Jake, did you dye your hair? No, if I dyed my hair, it would be a different color than the same color it was. I've been getting sun, though. That maybe was why it was a bit lighter. But anyway, talking about some crazy stories out there, the first of which we're all known Envyus. You guys know their North American pickup. They, of course, had the former French team. That team was going slowly downhill, I guess we could probably all agree. They wanted to go closer to home. They're based out of Texas, so they wanted to pick up a North American team and grab that North American Pro League spot, which is exactly why they signed the X-Splice roster alongside Nifty and JDM. Now, a lot of us question this roster like we have in the past. You guys are a very smart community. You know when a pickup is probably not going to work out, and this one was definitely fitting that role and certainly is on its way to fitting that role. Currently in last place, and ESL Pro League guys, they will not be retaining that spot. They will likely get relegated unless they can actually fight and retain it somehow, which is probably still going to be a pretty tough battle. They currently sit 1-12, so relegation is coming their way, but they can still, of course, keep that spot in the future, and it makes you question a lot of organizations like this, right? We have Envyus doing this. We have Esports. They also signed the Brazilian team, who is doing just as poorly in ESL Pro League, although a step up from the Envyus roster. Alongside that, we look back in time to 100 Thieves. Remember when they signed the Immortals roster, and that fell apart very shortly, although that roster had a lot more talent, a lot more firepower than these rosters did, and it does make you question in terms of funding out there to these organizations. Who do they question? Who do they go through to actually make this investment for these Pro League spots, and is it actually worth it? Now, actually, according to Decay, we knew this quite some time ago. Thanks to him, apparently it will be Semphis on that roster to be targeted, to be replaced, which is not very shocking. We knew of that roster, JDM and Nifty probably weren't the weaker links. It was probably going to be some of the X-Splice guys, and Semphis is apparently one of those targets to be replaced, and of course, once he is, maybe other changes will be made to that roster. But I wanted to share a clip quick with you guys as well. It was actually on Hector. If you guys don't know OpTic Hecz, he has a very good podcast called the Eavesdrop Podcast. He actually had Envyus owner Hastro on that podcast, and here's what he had to say about expansions and why they chose CSGO, and it did make a little bit of sense.
We had to expand into other games, and I guess the way I could relay this question is that made it a lot easier. The first expansion, that decision to expand it at first, we actually expanded to StarCraft first, but then a couple months later followed it up with Counter-Strike. I would say the Counter-Strike decision, that decision to expand to Counter-Strike really opened the door for us to be a global esports brand, and made it much easier to make the decision to expand again and again and again.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely the most crucial one for me.
And of course, that was in reference most likely in the past to his French roster, which was more successful, more well-known than this current roster, but it does make sense, right? If you want to be a most notably known international organization, you probably have a Counter-Strike team. So of course, to open those doors, you're going to be willing to sign these teams and make a few risks. And talking to Hector, he knows all about the CSGO risks, right? Hector, of course, was somewhat tied to OpTic India, as well as, of course, their Brazilian team, and of course, their current European roster. Now, that's obviously Infinite who runs most of that stuff, but he is a part of OpTic as well, so he knows all about those risky choices and actually going into Counter-Strike, because if you want to be known internationally, you need a Counter-Strike team. So I really wonder about the future of Envyus. I do not see this organization, unless they make significant changes, actually coming up, because when you look at their current, 1-12 in Pro League, there's not much you can say about that, guys, but hopefully changes will come soon and help that roster out. But one last thing I actually drew from this interview, guys, and I'll link this full interview down below as well. It was a great episode. It's actually Hector saying this about OpTic CSGO team.
Crimsix, when we were about to step into Counter-Strike, we had the opportunity to pick up at the time Luminosity.
Yeah, he was a great Counter-Strike player.
Yeah, so at the time when we were about to expand into Counter-Strike, I had the opportunity to pick up what then became the Brazilian team that became SK. And I talked to Krim about this, and we were in we were in Burbank. And I'm like, Krim, what do you think? Should we go with this, North American team? This team's also up for grabs, but I don't know what the contract situation is there. What's up? And he's like, well, I personally think you should reach out to the Brazilians, because not only are they a crazy good team, but you have an entire country that's gonna follow along with it. And I'm like, I agree. Then I went down the line and I figured, that I couldn't, because they were selling the contract with Luminosity. And then like 2 weeks later, they got out of the contract, and that could have been me.
Can you imagine if that would have happened? Now, part of me thinks, oh my gosh, that would have been glorious, right? That would have been probably my favorite team for a long time if they would have been as successful as they were. Of course, a part of that SK Gaming roster, who knows? But also on top of that, I thought, you know what? It has a way of working its way out, right? You could obviously say OpTic Gaming right now is struggling in CSGO. They have not done much with that roster, although probably slightly improving with their recent addition of Nico. But still, on top of that, we never would have known Mixwell and the boys like Rush and Tarek maybe as well, and Stanislaw and Shazam. We never would have really heard those names most likely, and I think especially Mixwell, his rise was with OpTic Gaming. Now, of course, he's a part of Movistar. Now he's rising with them as well very slowly. So that's just crazy to see that OpTic Gaming back in 2016, I believe, maybe late 2015, almost signed the Luminosity roster. They avoided it, and then if you guys remember correctly, they were poached by SK and then joined them shortly after. It's crazy the things that you never will know until a couple years later. But in absolutely big news, I know a lot of you guys have been OpTic India fans. A lot of you guys have been watching these videos about this. I do have more updates for all of you. I told you all I would not make a video about this until our entire wrap-up video. I do apologize. I did lie. It seems currently right now, Nickel from CSGO to Asia has yet to release his full statement, but now players are coming out with their statements. On top of that, I want to share with all of you guys, someone has actually contacted me with a lot of information around this team that I don't think many people knew out there. I certainly didn't know a lot of information about it, and it's great information to share. I will probably share that with you guys probably sometime in the next 2 weeks. I'm going to try and make a video out of that. All I can tell you guys right now is take these interviews that these players come out with a grain of salt. As we know right now, many of you guys probably did not know this, AFK Gaming was an official partner of OpTic India, and they are now one of very few websites releasing interviews with the players. So it does make you take what they say with a grain of salt. You know, if they're a partner of OpTic India, are they forcing these players or kind of, you know, stringing these players along to say certain things? Although Marzil did come forward, guys, with a very convincing statement, clearly saying he had no idea. And this is, of course, in agreement with what Forsaken said. Forsaken said the players and management and the coaches had no idea of his cheats. And now we have Marzil coming forward, another former player of that OpTic India roster, saying the exact same thing. His statement was very, very convincing. I'll show it to you guys as well on screen. But this is the way he said everything. It didn't seem too scripted. It did seem, again, very, very legitimate. And the way he ended it kind of just, it almost breaks your heart. That's just the way life goes sometimes. And again, no, that's not how life goes, man. Most CSGO pro players are not screwed over by one pro player. So as of right now, we still have contradicting statements, though. Of course, Forsaken and now Marzil, two former players of OpTic India, do both say that no one knew of his cheats. Of course, one of them, Forsaken, being the cheater. But we still have YB. But YB did come forward with VP Esports, and apparently YB did have suspicions. So there are still contradicting statements out there. I will let you guys know as soon as I know as well more information about this. And once Nickel from CSGO to Asia, the director over there, the founder of CSGO to Asia, the last tournament Forsaken did cheat at, once he comes out with his statements, I will release an entire video wrapping up everything and also sharing all the information that has come to me in the last few days. And on top of that, very lastly, some happy news for former OpTic India Antidote. He has now been signed to 2Easy Gaming. That's actually a smaller Indian org out there as well. So congrats to him. He's actually finding another team out there to compete for. But for the rest of the roster, it's still an extremely sad story. And very lastly in CSGO news, I do want to quick remind you guys, tomorrow's episode will be about Thorn versus Bardolph, that little drama over there. I'm trying to figure out a best way to present that stuff. On top of that, though, the very lastly for today's episode, and we'll also talk about this tomorrow as well, as we have the European Open qualifiers and the North American Open qualifiers for our Katowice 2019 major still going on. Just to remind you guys as well, quickly on screen for all of you, here are the current teams who have qualified for the closed qualifier, not even the minor yet. These are the North American teams for the closed qualifier compared to the European teams, and it's absolutely stunning. I almost can't even believe the teams. So we always knew Europe was stacked, right? But for this year, it might be our worst year yet in terms of competitiveness, especially when you compare it to the teams who have even been invited to the North American side. Just one off the top of my head, Space Station Gaming, last time I checked, was like 1-9 or 3-9 in ECS standings. They were invited to the closed qualifier. Compare that to teams like Space Holders, OpTic, Kingwin. We also have, of course, Mouse Sports in the closed qualifier, not even in the minor yet. So these teams have to, of course, they go to the closed qualifier, then qualify for the minor, and then the major qualifier. It's absolutely astounding to see that the level of talent in Europe this year is going to be insane for Katowice 2019. On top of that, though, we will have 2 additional teams qualifying for those open qualifiers after today. If you guys are watching live, currently me recording, they have not qualified yet, but it will not be Team Vitality. Team Vitality actually lost to Tempo Storm quite handedly. They lost to Tempo Storm 16-7. It's also, unfortunately enough, team left out. They actually added Crystal for XMS, which I think most of us would probably agree would be a great pickup. They lost to Team Cats. That's actually Loba's team, and actually in very dramatic fashion, Team Cats also lost, I believe, 1 or 2 rounds later, unfortunately enough, but it was actually a 14-4 lead that they blew on Cash. 14-4, I believe it went to overtime as well, and they lost that matchup, which is actually incredible. Alongside that, teams like LDLC lost to Mixtura. So a lot of teams out there have yet to qualify for the European closed qualifier, and we're going to see a lot more teams qualify as well on both the European side, the North American side, and of course our Asian teams as well, along some others. But it seemed the hardest part for these pro players is not even playing, it's actually signing up. We have seen 3 occurrences. You guys have probably seen even more. All the ones I've caught on Twitter so far, it was actually Fox. Yesterday, he apparently had some sign-in issues. I don't think that was necessarily his fault. Alongside that, though, Snyder forgot to check in his team. His team forgot to sign in, as well as Pith. It was Pith last week for the first qualifier. They forgot to sign in. This is your future, guys. I don't know how hard it is to sign in. Maybe it's a tedious process, but so far, at least 3 teams. It might be more. You guys probably heard of. The hardest part seems to actually be to sign in for these European qualifiers. So on top of that, though, hope you guys all enjoy. As always, my name is Jake. I will see you guys back here tomorrow for some more CSGO news. Thank you all for the great comments. It's been a crazy week so far, and it surely will be a crazy week these next few weeks as we figure out our minor closed qualifier teams. But hope you guys all enjoy. I will see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.